Provence no longer carries the scent of lavender, and Stockholm has ceased to be a symbol of safety. While tourists scour the French heartland for cozy flea markets, they stumble upon oriental bazaars where French speech is drowned out by the din of Urdu, Arabic, and Pashto. This is not a dystopian scenario. This is the new European reality that can no longer be ignored. Why do Muslims flee to Christian Europe and not to the rich countries of Arabia? Why do they choose cold Stockholm over co-religious Dubai? It is precisely this paradox that we will unpack today. To understand the depth of the crisis, one need only look at the numbers. Sweden, a country that served as a beacon of tolerance for decades, has officially admitted defeat. Integration has failed. Parallel societies have formed within the country, where state laws yield to the laws of clans and street gangs. The Swedish government has taken an unprecedented step. Starting in 2026, migrants who agree to voluntarily leave the country will be paid up to 350,000 Swedish kroner, over $30,000 per person. Think about that figure. Previously, the payout was only 10,000 kroner. Increasing the sum by 35 times is not generosity. It is a scream of despair. It is the price the state is willing to pay to regain control over its own territory. And Sweden is not alone.
Buonasera a tutti!
Italy. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni openly declares, "I will not allow Italy to be turned into a refugee camp for all of Europe." The Netherlands. Geert Wilders wins elections with a hardline thesis on the incompatibility of Islamic culture and Western values. Ireland. In Dublin, protests escalate into riots. The Crown Paints factory, which authorities plan to convert into housing for 500 refugees, was set on fire multiple times. The slogan, "Ireland is full," is becoming the motto of the new political reality. Europe is bursting at the seams. Hospitals are overcrowded. Schools cannot cope with the influx of children who do not speak the language. And police are afraid to enter the ghettos. But here arises the main paradox that baffles any outside observer. The flow of refugees comes predominantly from Muslim countries: Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia. People are fleeing war and poverty. Logic suggests, if you are a Muslim fleeing trouble, why not seek salvation among brothers in faith? Nearby, the wealthiest monarchies of the Persian Gulf are flourishing: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait. They have the same mosques, a similar culture, a familiar language, and enough money to pave the desert. Yet refugees strive not for rich Dubai, but for alien, Christian secular, and cold Europe. Why? The answer is cynical and simple. The Arab world has locked its doors. The Gulf monarchies are authoritarian regimes where power is hereditary. But most importantly, their economy is structured like a giant private corporation belonging to one big family. Imagine that the country is a successful firm sitting on a gold mine. The indigenous inhabitants are the shareholders. There are few of them, and they receive huge dividends, free healthcare, debt forgiveness, and high salaries simply for the fact of citizenship. Migrants, on the other hand, are the hired staff: cleaners, construction workers, engineers. There are many times more of them than shareholders. And now this staff knocks on the board of directors' door and says, "Hey, we've been working here for 10 years. Make us shareholders too. We want a share of the profits too." For the sheikhs, this is a nightmare. The math is simple. If you distribute shares, citizenship, to millions of workers, then wealth collapses. The income of indigenous residents will be diluted into pennies. Power collapses. The new shareholders will immediately vote to change the CEO, the sheikh. That is why they remember the tragedy of Lebanon in the 70s, where a demographic shift led to a bloody civil war. The sheikhs realized, either you keep the doors closed or you lose everything. Therefore, the Gulf operates the ruthless but effective Kafala system. No refugees. Such a legal status simply does not exist. Contract only. You are needed only as long as you are working. Lost your spot? You have 30 days to pack and get out. Citizenship is blood. You can be born in Qatar, live there for 50 years, and know the language perfectly, but you will forever remain a guest. The Persian Gulf states principally did not sign the Geneva Convention on Refugees. Their strategy is simple and pragmatic. They willingly use cheap labor to erect their futuristic skyscrapers, but they categorically refuse to see these people as future masters of their land. In this system, a migrant is a useful tool, not a potential compatriot. Why can't Europe act just as harshly? Why is it obliged to accept, feed, and treat millions of people who are often hostile to its culture? The roots of this helplessness lie in the history of the 20th century. Europe has been held hostage by two factors. 1. The shadow of war. Modern Europe is built on the ashes of World War II. After the horrors of the Holocaust and Nazism, the West swore to create a world where a person cannot be killed or driven to death simply because of their origin. The Geneva Convention of 1951 was written for Europeans fleeing the Nazis and Stalinism. The principle of non-refoulement, prohibition on expulsion to dangerous conditions, is a shrine of European law. To cancel it today means admitting that the lessons of the war have been forgotten. But a legal mechanism created to save dissidents is today being used by economic migrants as a lockpick for borders. 2. The trap of temporary workers. After World War II, the continent lay in ruins, but the economic miracle soon began. Volkswagen factories in Germany and construction sites in Paris grew at breakneck speed, and they required millions of hands. However, there was no one to work. The war had mowed down an entire generation of men. The authorities of Germany and France planned that a migrant would work for 2 years and leave, without burdening the budget with pensions and schools. But businesses didn't want to spend money training newcomers every couple of years, and insisted on extending contracts. Swiss writer Max Frisch perfectly described the collapse of this system. "We asked for workers, we got people instead." By the mid-70s, workers took advantage of the European right to family reunification. Yesterday's temporary guests brought over wives and children, finally putting down roots. Europe did not invest in integration for decades, hoping they would leave someday. Migrants didn't learn the language, planning to return. In this vacuum, modern ghettos were born, an internal abroad where European laws work only formally. Let's return to Europe. The problem is not that people of a different faith arrived. The problem is that Europe could not handle the quantity and the speed of the flow. When a state accepts more people than it can digest, ghettos arise. Newcomers settle compactly in cheap districts. Locals leave. Schools in such areas degrade because the teacher spends 90% of the time not on math, but on attempts to explain material to children who don't know the language. As a result, a generation grows up holding a French or Swedish passport, but hating that country. They lack a proper education, and they aren't hired for good jobs due to their address and surname. The only social elevator is crime. Thus, Europe got districts where the police only enter with SWAT teams. The riots in the suburbs of Paris or the gang wars in Sweden are not accidents. They are the logical result of failed social policy. Realizing that the old methods are leading to catastrophe, Brussels has begun to act. Right now, Europe is rewriting its laws, transforming from a thoroughfare into an impregnable fortress. Here are the 4 pillars of the new European policy. Filter at the entrance. The new EU Migration Pact introduces strict rules. A migrant's fate is decided right at the border in a few days. If you are not fleeing a real war, but simply seeking a better life, deportation follows immediately, without the right to live in Europe for years while litigating. Exporting borders, outsourcing the problem. Europe realized a legal loophole. If a migrant's foot steps on EU soil, they gain rights. The solution? Don't let them step on that soil. Italy is already building refugee reception centers in Albania. People are intercepted at sea and taken not to Rome, but to Tirana. There, outside EU jurisdiction, the chances of getting asylum are drastically lower. Money instead of asylum. Everywhere, from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean, the practice of payouts for departure is being implemented. It is cheaper than supporting an unemployed person for years. Forced integration. No more multiculturalism in the old sense. Want to stay? Learn the language, pass exams, work. The screws are being tightened as much as possible. Europe is not dying, but it is saying goodbye forever to the era of romantic humanism. The migration crisis has forced the old world to take off its rose-colored glasses and look the truth in the eye. You cannot be open to everyone in a world where most neighbors play by completely different, harsh rules. Migrants are not evil. They are people seeking a better lot, and they cannot be blamed for that. But the system that allowed chaos to govern order has broken. Now Europe is building a new system. Whether it will succeed in saving face while ensuring the safety of its citizens is the main question of the coming decade. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with how the world is changing. See you soon.